Hi everyone, and welcome to today's lesson on September 1st. Today we will be discussing the art of writing, and I apologize for having to film on my phone. This was the most efficient way to film it for today, but I will try to hold my hand as steady as I can as we go through these slides. Now today we will be discussing how a journalist writes and the style of writing that a journalist has, as opposed to, say, the way that you might write in your English class. Now, again, journalists have a particular style. It's mostly similar to how we write for school, but there are a few differences, and they are pretty significant. Here are the general guidelines, is that first and foremost, you have a headline, you have your paragraphs, and then you have your individual sentences that you need to write. Now, the headline is almost similar to a topic sentence that you might write for a paragraph in school, where a topic sentence lists off the important facts that you need to know, such as maybe the book that you're writing about and the author who wrote the book. Well, your headline serves as your hook. It's your attention getter, and it gives you just a little bit of information about the story. It's enough information to make the story interesting to readers. Your headline wants to be one that grabs the attention of your readers and gets them to pick up your article. You might have seen a distorted version of a headline when you're scrolling through social media and you see a kind of headline that says, top 10 techniques to do something, top 10 techniques to do whatever thing that you're looking at. Number 6 will surprise you, right? We call that clickbait. And that is a type of headline, and it is meant to grab your attention. Now, the paragraphs that we are looking at, in journalism, your paragraphs are generally between 1 and 3 sentences long, your whole paragraph. That's different from a paragraph that you might write for an English class, in which a paragraph might be as many as 8 sentences long. However, another difference is that the paragraphs in journalistic writing, they don't have topic sentences and concluding sentences, or else we wouldn't get anywhere and our articles would be very, very long. Instead, they're broken up into chunks in order to increase readability and to allow our readers to stay interested. Finally, we have, so for instance, about the staying interested part, right? If this were an English class and your teacher gave you the option of reading a novel that is 400 pages long in a week or a novel that is 100 pages long, which one would you pick? You would probably pick the 100-page novel because it's shorter. Well, journalists have to treat their blogs the same way. We have to write in such a way that people who don't normally enjoy reading will still be hooked and still want to continue reading. And we do that by playing some mind tricks and allowing them to see our writing in smaller chunks and in groups of of shorter sentences, like 1 or 2 sentences, instead of groups of 8 or 9 sentences in a paragraph. And we'll see some examples in a little bit. Finally, our individual sentences tend to be shorter and more concise. They need to be very concrete sentences. For instance, let's create one complex sentence in which we say a sentence such as this. John Smith is a middle school student in Mr. Shook's journalism class. He is also a pitcher for his middle school baseball team. Right? That's 2 sentences. But what if we condense it into one? What if we wrote CHMS pitcher John Smith is in Mr. Shook's journalism class? Well, there we have the exact same information that we were just given in the first. We know in this area that CHMS stands for Charles Henderson Middle School. So we know that John Smith is a middle school student. We also know that he's a pitcher and that he's taking my journalism class. We don't need to make 2 sentences when we can just make one short, concise one. Now, here's some examples of various headlines. All drowned but 868. That might grab your attention. If everybody drowned except for 868, well, that must mean that there must have been a lot of people that have drowned, because we don't typically say all drowned except for this number. If there were 870 people on that boat or on whatever drowned. We wouldn't say everybody drowned except for 868. No, we would just say 2 people drowned. So for us to say all drowned but 868 means that there were a lot of people. And that was the news headline for the RMS Titanic, the ship that was known as the unsinkable ship, that even God could not sink. Those were some of the taglines used to describe the Titanic. And on its maiden voyage, its very first voyage, it hit the iceberg and sank. We also have Dr. Einstein instead. He unlocked the door to the atomic age. This is what we call an obituary. Now, obituaries are news articles, are news reports of people who have died. Einstein would have gotten a larger obituary, a more nationally publicized one, because of how famous he was. But you might see these in your local newspaper if you have a small enough community. We also have the Lusitania sunk, 1,000 are probably lost. You know, everyone knew who what the Lusitania was when it sank. It was what triggered, what helped really get other nations into the war after the Lusitania was attacked. Now, World War is over. I want to focus on this one. This newspaper, World War is Over, was not published in 1945 at the end of World War II. It was published in 1918 at the end of World War I. What's important about this headline is that World War I in 1918 was not known as a world war. It was known as the Great War. This is one of the first instances of the Great War first being named World War I. And it's a big deal headline. And again, in 1918, everybody would have known what specific war was ending. And then finally, we have Man Walks on the Moon. Now, if you look at the date, July 21st, 1969, 1969 is when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin first stepped onto the moon. Everybody had known that the U.S. was planning this launch to get men to walk on the moon. And so we didn't have to necessarily say, U.S. sends men to walk on the moon. Everyone kind of already knew what was going on. And so to say man walks on the moon gives us just enough information as readers to know the U.S. was successful. Let me pose this hypothetical to you. If there were a news headline right now, September 1st, 2020, that read, "The virus has infected hundreds of thousands." What virus am I talking about? You're probably guessing the coronavirus, in which case you would be correct as far as the virus that I'm referring to. But that's because that is the big medical dilemma going on in the world right now. You didn't have to pause and think, was Mr. Shook talking about influenza? Well, no, not quite yet, because it's not flu season quite yet for 2020. But the coronavirus has been the issue that we've been dealing with for the past several months. Now, here's the breakdown of how a news article needs to be written. We have 3 sections to it. We have the lead, we have the body, and we have the tail. Now, as you can read, the lead is the most important information about an event. There are 6 questions that a journalist must be able to answer. The who, what, where, when, why, and how. For instance, if we're talking about the NBA, if we're writing a sports article and we're talking about the NBA, then we might talk about how on Tuesday, the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets are set to play each other. If you did a news article on the NBA and on this particular game, your who would be the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. Your what would be both the fact that they had a game and it would be who won the game. Your where would let us know which team was home, which team was away, right? Which team traveled to play the game, let us know where the game took place. You would also let us know when. Again, they're set to play Tuesday night. So you would say when, Tuesday night, the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets, square it off on the court. Now, the why and the how can kind of go together sometimes, and they would in this case. The question wouldn't be, why did they play a basketball game? Because the answer is they were scheduled to play. The why and the how would be, who won, why did they win? Naturally, it's because they scored more points, but how did they win, right? So this is where you would list stats of the game or tell about the play that sealed the game, right? The turnover that Denver had as they shot a buzzer beater in the final seconds to win the game-winning basket, to score the game-winning basket, right? You have questions for these. Not every news article is going to answer all 6, but we need to try to answer as many of these as we possibly can whenever we write a news article. Now, next we have the body. Now, the body is really where we flesh out our information. It's where we really give our readers a chance to understand the story. Because the lead, while it's full of the important information, the lead is only going to be between 1 and 3 sentences long. The body is the whole lead is 1 and 3 sentences long. The body, on the other hand, while we split it up into multiple paragraphs of 1 to 3 sentences, the body itself can be multiple paragraphs. It can be however long it needs to for a news writer, for a journalist, to reach the word count. And it's going to tell us any kind of controversies or stories or any kind of evidence that's going on. For instance, if a major fight broke out in that Denver-Utah basketball game, we would expound on it. We would talk about it in the body. We would mention how the tensions were high and who threw the first punch and what happened as a result of it. That would be the body. And again, it can be several paragraphs long. Finally, we have the tail. And the tail is any kind of extra information or last tidbits that need to be stated, generally in a sentence. You probably don't want to have more than 1 sentence in your tail. For a sports article, it would be, depending on how the sports article is written, if it's an article or if it's a blog that follows the Jazz specifically, then your tail would mention the Jazz tips off next on Thursday at 7:00 p.m. It lets us know a little bit about what's to come, if there's anything to come. Some of you have expressed interest in having a science blog, and so if you're writing the next big story that NASA has leaked, then your tail might be the next time NASA is planning on having a press conference to discuss this, right? This is what the tail is for. It's for these particular purposes. Just your final tidbit, last minute information. Then again, here's your lead. It's your opening paragraph, and it's where you'll answer your 6 questions: the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how. Your body, again, is the longest portion of the text, and it's your second most important part of the news, and that's where it fully fleshes out the story and gives your readers all of the details that they're clamoring for. And then finally, we have the tail. Again, it's the final paragraph. I wrote paragraph or 2. It really needs to be limited to just 1 paragraph. It wraps up your article by giving interesting information, and if it's an editorial, if it is an opinion piece, it might also include a bit of the journalist's final thoughts regarding the topic that's being written about. But again, that's really only limited to editorials or opinion pieces. Now, I want us to take a look at a couple of news stories so that we can see what a headline looks like and we can try to identify the 6 journalist questions. I am stuck until that border opens. Marooned in paradise. Well, marooned in paradise. It's not good to be marooned, but paradise is supposed to be a good thing, right? See, this is an example of an effective headline because it gets the readers interested. Point Roberts, Washington. A home that long seemed like paradise is lately beginning to feel more like Alcatraz. A 5 square mile drop of land clinging to the southern end of British Columbia with views of snow-capped Mount Baker to the east and the San Juan Islands to the south, Point Roberts is detached from the rest of Washington state. Not far south of Vancouver, it is a relic of the Oregon Treaty in 1846, which set the northern border of what was then the Oregon Territory at the 49th parallel. To reach the rest of the United States from Point Roberts requires 2 international border crossings within a 24-mile drive in between. The isolation is both a blessing and a curse during a pandemic. Despite having no coronavirus cases to date, Point Roberts may be the last place in the United States to return to normal because the Canadian government has extended its border closure each month since shutting down on March 21st. Only people with reasons deemed essential are allowed to cross, and the order has been strictly enforced. Now, this is just part of the news article, but we already have some things that we can look at. What's going on? Well, we can gather, especially based on the headline, that this person is stuck until the border opens. Some people are marooned in probably a honeymoon location if it's paradise, or a vacation kind of destination. We also know what's going on. We know that that areas around Point Roberts are being closed down, making travel difficult. We know where. We see right there, Point Roberts, Washington. And we see why. Because in order to get from Point Roberts back to the continental United States, you must travel through Canada. And Canada has closed its borders and extended its border closings. So here we already have the why and the how. Again, the why and the how kind of go together. So we have an effective news article. It's telling us what's going on, when it's going on. Now, the when, in this case, this was posted this morning at 5 a.m. The people have been there for a while, but as of now, they are still stuck there. So that is our when. We're given the date, and we're given kind of this idea of when the story happened, right? Let's look at another one. Joe Ruby, this is an obituary. We will save some time and skip over the obituary. But here we are. Oh, the headline has been cut off. A Hoover apartment complex sells for $26.67 million. For almost $27 million, a Hoover apartment complex has been sold. Now, this is interesting. So let's check it out. Why would an apartment complex sell for that much? A Hoover apartment complex has sold for almost $27 million to a Tampa, Florida-based real estate investment group. Carter Multifamily has bought Summer Chase at River Chase, a 240-unit apartment complex built in 1988 in Hoover. Jimmy Adams and Andrew Brown of Cushman & Wakefield represented the seller, Tribridge Residential, in the deal. Adams said the transaction represents the onset of a higher number of capital market trades coming in the third quarter of the year, after a relatively slow second quarter due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what is going on here? What is our what? Well, our what is that a Hoover apartment complex sells for $26.67 million. Who? Well, we have our who is Carter Multifamily, a Tampa, Florida-based real estate group, is the group that bought the Summer Chase apartment complex at River Chase. We also have the why down there. Adam said the transaction represents the onset of a higher number of capital market trades. So we're given the business reason as to why the trade has gone on. We're given the where. It's the Hoover apartment complex. Now, this came from AL.com, Alabama.com, which focuses on Alabama news. There's only one Hoover in Alabama, and it's that suburb area just south of Birmingham. So we also know where it's going. The only thing that we aren't completely sure about is when. We're not given a specific time. However, we are told that, again, the transaction represents the onset of a higher number of capital market trades coming in the third quarter of the year. And it's also being referenced, the time frame is being referenced by a slow second quarter due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So using our context clues, we can kind of figure out when this sale took place as well, very recently because of a slow summer. Now, I have a little bit of homework for you guys. I want to have some practice identifying primarily our 6 journalist questions. So I want you guys to go on either WSFA.com or the DothanEagle.com, 2 of the largest news stations in Montgomery and in Dothan, and I want you to find a news article and read it. It can be just about anything. Now, in just a few minutes, I will open up a Schoology assessment, and I would like for you to post a link to your news article on the discussion post that I'm about to link, and then I would like for you to go to the assessments, which will also be in that same folder for today, and I will have 6 questions: your who, your what, your where, your when, your why, and your how. And I want you to answer as best as you can those 6 questions. You might not have an answer for all 6 in your news article. You might not, and I understand that. But I want you to try to answer as many as you can. That's also why I want you to link the news article that you find to the Schoology post as well. That way I can check up on it too and make sure that we've got all the information that we need. So this will be due September 2nd at 11:59 p.m. This will be due tomorrow evening at midnight. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out, and I'm looking forward to seeing your responses.